Wow, who is this handsome guy? Both Cindy's husband, Jim, and their friend Barbara were shocked by her question. They hadn't even entered the yard through the gate yet. Barbara looked in the direction Cindy was looking and saw that she was talking about Adam's friend, her brother-in-law. "Yeah, in case you haven't noticed, I'm standing right next to you," Jim reminded his wife. "What? I can't appreciate a handsome macho man when I see one?" she asked. "Well, if you're going to stare at some guy, I'd rather you at least keep it to yourself," Jim responded a little harshly before turning his attention to the hostess. He smiled. "Hey, Barb, sorry for being rude." Barbara and her husband, Tony, hosted an outdoor birthday party for their daughter, who had just entered her teens. Barbara saw them approaching the sidewalk and held the gate open, but she didn't even have time to say hello. She decided to ignore Cindy's question. "No problem, come in," she said, still holding the gate. "Where should I put it?" Jim asked, holding a case of beer. "There's a few coolers with ice over there by the tree, Jim. A couple of them hold soft drinks for the kids and the rest hold beer. Just find an empty one. They put the gifts on that table over there," she mentioned to Cindy, who was carrying a nicely wrapped box. Tony, the co-host of the backyard, noticed them as they entered and came over to greet them. "Hey, you two, welcome," he said, kissing Cindy on the cheek. "Jimbo, let me help you with this." As he reached to free Jim from the box, Cindy tried again. "Hey, Tony, who is this Adonis sitting with your brother?" Tony, who was a little slow and hadn't heard the previous conversation, didn't understand yet. He looked where Cindy pointed. "Oh, his name is Bob or something. He works in construction with Adam. Why ask? Do you know him?" "No, but I would like to," she replied. "I mean, speaking of handsome?" Tony looked at Jim in shock. He had no idea what was going on, but he tried to soften the situation. "Better keep an eye on her, Jim. Looks like she's on the hunt," he said with a smile. Jim was just as shocked as everyone else. His wife was clearly trying to make him jealous for some reason, but he wasn't going to ruin the party by getting angry, so he just laughed it off and forced himself to smile. "Yes, it looks like she's preparing to exchange me for a young model." "You can't wait for that day," Barbara joked, slapping Jim on the arm. "Well, come on in, guys," Tony commented. "Barb, would you mind showing Cindy where to put the gifts?" When she saw the expression on his face, Barbara knew exactly what her husband really wanted to say. He wanted her to ask Cindy about her behavior. On her way to the gift table, she lowered her voice so no one else could hear. "Okay, Cin, what's going on? Did you and Jim have a fight or something? What are you talking about? Don't lie to me. We've all been friends for a long time, and I've never heard you talk like that in front of Jim. Something is going on." "I'm just giving him a taste of his own medicine, that's all. He runs around all day and winks at every pretty girl he sees. You know Linda Kingston?" "Yes. She was at a restaurant a few days ago and saw Jim when he came in to eat. He obviously didn't see her. She told me that a waitress came up to him and kissed him. She said they talked and laughed during lunch and flirted with each other all the time." "Cindy, he's a friendly, outgoing guy. He always has been." "Letting some girl kiss you is way more than just being friendly, Barb. It's beyond the pale, and you know it. Tony just kissed you on the cheek a minute ago." "This is different. We've been friends for years. This is some waitress he's obviously flirting with when he walks in there. I don't like it, and it definitely doesn't pass the wife test." "Wife test?" "Yes, you know. Men use this all the time. Only for them it is a test of the husband. A wife should never do anything in public, or alone, by the way, that she would not do in front of her husband. Well, what is good for the goose, as it says. So you chose my daughter's birthday to give Jim a dose of grief? Oh, don't worry. I'm not going to do anything really bad. I didn't even think about it until I saw Adam's friend there. He's perfect. I just want to teach Jim a lesson, that's all. Well, do me a favor and don't start fights, okay? Oh, I won't. Besides, look at that guy. He's got muscles on top of muscles. Jim would have to be crazy to mess with him. Okay. Okay. I see a few more people coming up to the sidewalk, so I need to go greet the guests. See you later. Remember, no fighting, okay? No fighting, Barb. I promise. She looked around and saw Jennifer, the guest of honor, talking with her friends, and decided to go over to wish her a happy birthday. Jim had just finished helping Tony put away the beer and decided to do the same. They both arrived at the same time. Cindy spoke first. Congratulations, honey, you're now officially a teenager. Now you can really give your parents a hard time. She laughed. That goes for me too, Jen, Jim chimed in. The congratulations part, I mean. I'm not sure about giving your parents a hard time, he joked. Jennifer laughed at Jim's joke. It was common knowledge in their circle that she had been in love with him since she was little. Thank you, she replied, hugging Cindy and kissing Jim on the cheek. These are my friends, Coral, Katie, and Debbie, she announced. They both talked with Jen and her friends for a few more minutes, but Cindy was eager to continue her plan for Jim's lesson. Honey, she said to the girl on her birthday, I'm going to come over and say hello to your uncle. See you later. Jim was about to walk with her when he saw Tony sign to him. As Cindy started walking, he commented, Be good. She just gave him a sinister look. Jim walked over to Tony, who was still standing by the refrigerators. What's up, buddy? I just thought I'd give you a heads up, Barb said to Cindy. Looks like you were flirting with some waitress. Cindy heard about it and decided to give you a lesson. I think that's what this whole pretty boy talk is about. Jim thought for a moment. I don't know what she's talking about. I didn't flirt with any waitress that I know of. Did she say where it was, or who supposedly saw me? I don't know. I don't think she said. But I'm sure she's planning on using Bob to make you jealous, so try to stay calm. Okay. While Tony and Jim were talking, Cindy approached her target. Hi, Adam. Hi, Cindy. How are you? Okay, I guess. Who's your handsome friend? While Adam stood there open-mouthed, his friend stood up and introduced himself. Hi, I'm Bob. I'm assuming you're talking about me, right? He said with a charming smile. Who else? She answered. Cindy, Adam interrupted. Where's Jim? He's over there talking to your brother. I'd like one of those, she said, pointing to the beer Bob was holding. Hey, Adam, be a gentleman and get the lady a beer while we get to know each other better. Not wanting to be impolite, he agreed. As soon as Adam went to the refrigerators, Bob offered Cindy his vacated seat. As she sat down, she looked at her husband, who was looking at her reproachfully. She liked knowing that her plan was working. She turned to start a conversation with her new friend. As Adam walked over to the refrigerators, he walked over to Tony and Jim. What happened to Cindy? What did she do? Asked Jim. She's flirting with Bob over there. Who is he anyway? He works with me. We're working on that big skyscraper downtown. I've known him for about 6 months. He seems okay, but he's definitely a ladies' man, and I wouldn't trust him with women, as far as I could throw him. He didn't bring a girl with him? Asked Jim. No, well, it was last minute. He was supposed to play golf today. We had just finished work yesterday around 5 when he got the cancellation message. He started complaining that he had nothing to do today, so I invited him to the party. At least Jim knew what his wife was up to. He just wasn't sure how to handle it. He knew his wife well. Once she has her mind set on something, she won't stop until she proves herself right. If he ignores her, it may encourage her to go further than she intended. On the other hand, if he runs into her, Bob might try to cause trouble. He was going to avoid this at all costs. Adam, do me a favor, okay? Just stay close. Let me know if you think things are getting out of hand. Okay, Jim. Adam grabbed a cold beer from the refrigerator and returned to Bob and Cindy, who were deep in conversation. Adam handed Cindy her beer and pulled up another chair. They were still talking, but he thought it was time to intervene. Maybe Bob will get the hint. Hey, I saw the photos Jim took of that sawmill fire the other day. He's a really great photographer. Is he going to enter the press photography competition again this year? She seemed a little annoyed that she and her new friend were interrupted, but she didn't want to be rude to Adam, so she responded politely. I guess? She turned to see Bob looking at her curiously. My husband is a photographer at Tribute. Last year he won several awards in a state competition they hold for press photographers. Oh, I see, he replied. That's him over there, right? He said, looking away with slight contempt. "It's him," she answered in an indifferent tone, the intonation of which neither Bob nor Adam could help but notice. "I like to work with my hands," Bob retorted. "To build strong, gigantic structures that will last 100 years. That's my reward. Yours too, right, old man?" he asked Adam. What was he supposed to say? "That's right, Bob." Assuming that Bob had just ended the little conversation about her husband, Cindy immediately returned to the conversation, mostly ignoring Adam. He felt like an idiot. He'd heard Bob use the same phrase about working with his hands on women in bars before. It always seemed to impress them, so he gave Bob the opportunity to cut his way through it. Feeling that he was doing more harm than good, Adam excused himself and went to wish his niece a happy birthday for the 20th time. Jim interacted with other guests, but never took his eyes off Cindy and her new friend. None of the guys he talked to mentioned his wife having fun with another man, but women started talking about it. He even heard Jenny talking to her friends. "He's a newspaper photographer," she told her classmates. "My dad says he gets into trouble all the time because of his job. I'm surprised he doesn't go over there and punch that guy in the nose." Jim chuckled to himself. Unfortunately, it wasn't Bob's fault, really. It was his wife's fault, and as much as he felt like it sometimes, he would never hit her or any other woman. He looked to the side and saw an empty beer bottle sitting on the ground next to Cindy's chair and another in her hands. She tends to drink more when she's nervous. This was not good. Bob had 3 empty bottles next to his chair. And then he heard Tony. "Is everyone hungry?" Tony stood at the grill. Jim was so absorbed in thinking about Cindy that he didn't even notice the smell of cooking meat. "We have hamburgers, bratwurst, and chicken cutlets," Tony announced. "Potato salad and other goodies are on the table over there. Everyone starts taking their plates." Jim thought this would be a good time to separate Bob from his wife. Maybe they could find a quiet corner to eat and he could find out more about who he was supposedly flirting with. As he turned in their direction, he saw the 2 would-be lovers place their beer glasses next to their chairs and stand up. Bob seemed to have decided that she would be his for the whole day, and he took her elbow possessively. "Not on this planet," Jim muttered under his breath. He quickly approached it. "Oh, excuse me, do you want to let go of my wife's hand?" Bob immediately released Cindy's hand and raised both hands, palms facing Jim. "Sorry," he said with a half-smile. "We were just going to go get some food." "Yeah. Well, now I can take it upon myself, thanks," Jim replied sharply. He took Cindy by the other elbow and literally led her to the food table. "What's the matter with you?" Cindy asked. It was extremely rude. He ignored his wife's comment, maneuvering her in front of him as they joined the food line. "Get food," he said dryly. "You and I will go over there to the barn and talk while we eat." Adam saw the exchange between Jim and Bob. Since his colleague was alone for the first time in a long time, he decided to take the opportunity to talk to him. "What are you doing?" he asked angrily. "She's married to one of my brother's best friends. Leave her alone." "Hey, man, you should tell her that. She's the one hitting on me. I'm just being polite." "Polite, my ass. I'm serious, Bob. Look, if you think you have a chance of sleeping with her, forget it. She's using you to get back at Jim for allegedly flirting with some waitress. Don't get involved in it." Okay, you win. If she comes over again, I'll send her right back to her husband, okay? If you don't send it, you'll fly out of here. I'm serious, Bob." "The word of a pioneer," he replied, holding up 3 fingers in the Boy Scout salute. "Now can I go eat?" "Yes, go." Cindy wasn't really upset about Jim interfering between her and Bob. Within a few hours of meeting him, he had already begun to be too intrusive, not to mention all his sexual innuendos, although it was kind of fun for her to see how easily she could manipulate a man once she put her mind to it. However, she could tell by the way he took her hand that she had pushed her husband to his breaking point. She promised Barbara not to start fights, and Jim had already shown that he wasn't intimidated by Bob's muscles. She needed to spend the rest of the day with her husband. She just hoped he had learned his lesson. They both loaded their plates with food, and Jim pointed towards the barn, away from the crowd. When they found a secluded spot, he handed Cindy his plate. "Here, hold this while I find some chairs. I'll be right back." Despite his anger, Jim was still a gentleman and held up the back of the chair while Cindy sat down. He placed his own nearby so they could talk in privacy. After a few sips, Jim couldn't hold it in any longer. He was nothing if not straightforward. "Okay, what's all this nonsense about me flirting with some waitress? Tell me yourself. Cindy, damn it. You know how much I hate playing these stupid word games. Where was all this flirting supposed to happen? When?" "Not sure where. It was last week somewhere." "Well, that certainly narrows it down, doesn't it?" "Well, I'm sure you know better than me, or have you been flirting with all the waitresses?" "Listen, waitresses do the hard work. I say hi, I smile, I joke a little, You kiss them," Cindy intervened. "Kiss them?" "That's what they told me." "Then one of two things happens. Either it's a case of mistaken identity, or someone is lying to you because you're the only woman I've kissed since we started dating." Cindy looked into his eyes. Although she wasn't sure if she could actually tell if he was lying or not by his eyes. But she wasn't sure then, because as far as she knew, he had never lied to her. "Why would anyone tell me they saw you kiss a waitress if it wasn't true?" "I have no idea," he said, taking a bite of his burger. "This is your friend. Ask her why she's lying to you." "How do you know it's a woman?" "It definitely has to be a woman. If you have a male friend who tells you he saw me kiss a waitress, you've answered your own question." At first, Cindy thought that maybe he actually saw her friend at the restaurant and kissed the waitress anyway, without even caring that it got through to her, but she wasn't sure what he meant by his last remark. "What do you mean, if it's a man?" I answered my own question. "It's just that if it's a man, he wants you and is trying to create trouble between us, probably thinking he might have a chance with you by being a good friend and offering you a shoulder to cry on." "Oh, that's funny." "Yes, think about it. Was it a man?" "No." "Okay, then we're back where we started. You'll have to ask your friend why she's lying to you." There was an awkward silence as they both finished their lunches. When they finished, Jim had some final words. "Now it's Jenny's birthday party, and I'm not going to ruin it by arguing with your new friend. So if you keep throwing yourself at him like you've been doing so far, I'll just leave you here, and you'll make your own way home. Or you can spend the night with Mr. Muscles, in which case you won't have a home to return to. Got it?" She was a little shocked by his anger. "God, Jim, don't go too far. I'm not going home with Bob. I didn't even think about it until I saw Adam's friend there. He's perfect. I just wanted to teach you a lesson, that's all. Well, now you showed me, so it ends here." He stood up, took his wife's paper plate and empty beer bottle, and went to throw everything in the trash. Turning around, he was glad to see his wife standing next to him. Bob, on the other hand, was not happy at all. He watched their conversation out of the corner of his eye as he sat alone, eating his chicken cutlet. He didn't believe for a minute that she was just using him. She was ready for action. There was not a shadow of doubt in his mind about this. He already imagined her standing naked in front of him. Unfortunately, as he saw it, Bob also recognized the need for secrecy. He had previously hoped that they could sneak off to the upstairs bedroom or maybe out to his car, but that was now out of the question. They were in plain sight. No, he would have to put off enjoying that beautiful body, at least for a while. There was still plenty of time at the party, and despite their unresolved issues, Jim and Cindy were determined to enjoy themselves. She stayed close to him for the rest of the day, sometimes moving away to talk to friends, but always returning to her husband. The only time Cindy had any contact with Bob was when everyone gathered to sing Happy Birthday and watch Jenny blow out the candles on the cake. Bob took the opportunity to sneak up on her and rub her ass while everyone sang. At first, she thought it was Jim, but he was on the other side of her. When she looked to the side, she saw Bob with a smirk on his face. She couldn't believe his courage. She quickly looked around to see if anyone was watching, but all eyes were on Jenny. In any other situation, she would have hit him, but she knew it would cause problems, something she desperately wanted to avoid. Besides, she thought it was her own fault for acting that way towards him. If she had the chance, she would have apologized to him and told him she wasn't really interested. He removed his hand to applaud along with everyone else when the birthday girl easily extinguished the flames on the candles with one breath. Jim looked to the side when he heard Bob's voice nearby, but didn't see anything special. Of course, Cindy wasn't going to tell him that Bob had his hand on her ass while singing Happy Birthday. Bob, of course, took her silence as agreement. Okay? He knew how to play the game. She had to be close to her husband so as not to arouse suspicion, but sooner or later she would have to go into the house to use the bathroom. Hopefully he can catch her alone long enough to arrange a time and place for them to meet. Unnoticed, he will keep an eye on her. For those who were aware of what had happened earlier, it seemed that the danger had passed. To their relief, both Bob and Cindy seemed to behave, so, with the exception of Jim, everyone relaxed and were no longer on their guard. Jim, on the other hand, had seen guys like Bob before, guys who thought they were God's gift to women, and knew they rarely backed down so easily. Just to be sure, he continued to keep an eye out for the potential intruder. The party was in full swing after everyone had eaten. Tony turned on the outdoor speakers and set his phone to Pandora for background music until the games started. The dartboard was set up in a large oak tree near the barn, and Jenny's friends helped her set up the beanbag game. Several women gathered several gaming tables together to play bingo. Jenny and her friends challenged her parents and Jim and Cindy to a game of beanbags, best 2 out of 3. Tony warned them that his daughter was a true professional. Luckily for them, she was only 25% of the team, and the first game went to the adults. This was their only victory. When it was over, Cindy turned to Jim and kissed him on the cheek. "Honey, I need to go to the ladies' room. I'll be back in a couple of minutes," she told him. "Okay, honey, I think I'll challenge Adam to darts." She stopped to talk to a couple of friends on her way into the house. She's lucky. There wasn't a soul inside, and there was a spare bathroom downstairs. Adam and Jim prepared to take their seats and throw one dart each to determine who would go first. Jim was just about to quit when... "He's leaving?" Adam muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. Jim stopped his hand before throwing. "What?" "Bob, looks like he's leaving. No goodbyes, no thanks for the invitation, no nothing." Jim turned around just in time to see Bob's back as he walked out the gate. "He's probably mad because Cindy isn't flirting with him anymore. I really think he had plans for you two." "I wouldn't be surprised," Adam replied. "He's really slick when it comes to women. I've seen him leave a bar with some pretty beautiful women." Jim turned back to the dartboard and was about to take aim when something dawned on him. How would someone enter a house without wanting to be seen? He would go out through the gate, walk around to the front, and enter that way. Jim handed the darts to Adam. "I'll be right back," he said before heading to the back door. Cindy did her job and fixed her makeup. When she opened the bathroom door, she was shocked to see Bob standing there. Before she could do or say anything, he grabbed her by the shoulders and pinned her against the doorframe. So quickly, once he locked her in place, he pressed his lips to hers. If Jim had been a split second late, he would have seen his wife forcefully push Bob away. But as it was, she hesitated for a moment, trying to compose herself. It was at that moment that Jim saw them. He grabbed Bob by the shoulder and pulled him away from his wife. As Bob turned to face him, Jim, using the full strength of his hips and back, hit him in the solar plexus with the force of a hammer. Cindy watched as her would-be suitor stumbled back into the bathroom and fell to one knee. He held onto the sink with one hand for support and clutched his chest with the other, trying to catch his breath. Cindy's brain was still trying to keep up with events. Everything happened so quickly. It seemed like she had just opened the door, and everything suddenly turned into chaos. She turned to face her husband, but he was not there. She looked one way, then the other, but he was nowhere to be seen. "Jim?" That's when she heard the car start. She ran out onto the front porch, just in time to see their car pull out of the driveway and head home. That's when she realized what it was all supposed to look like, especially after she'd been flirting with Bob all this time. She ignored Bob, who was still in the wheezing and coughing stage of trying to catch his breath, and ran out the back door. The first person she saw was Adam, who seemed to still be waiting for Jim to return. "Adam, you need to take me home. Now!" He looked at her and was very puzzled. She was in a panic. He looked for Jim, but didn't see him, and he didn't have the slightest idea why she was asking him to take her home. "Cindy, what happened? Where's Jim?" "He left. He found Bob kissing me and—" "What? Is he hurt?" "No, Bob is still in the house. I'm not sure if he's hurt. Jim hit him hard." Adam couldn't help but smile. "Jim beat up Bob?" Yes. Please, Adam, I need to get home to explain what happened. He was so angry. I'm not sure what he's going to do. I'm afraid he's planning to leave me." "Oh, I doubt it, Cindy. He's angry, but not that angry. You didn't see him just now." "Cindy, I was the first one to arrive. I doubt I'll be able to leave. I'm sure I'm blocked." "You're welcome, Adam." "Okay, give me a second to tell Tony we're leaving, and I'll see if we can get out of here." He hurried and gave his brother a rundown of what had happened, then walked around the house only to see what he expected. At least 6 cars parked behind him. "Cindy, you're going to have to call a taxi. There's no way I'm leaving here." "This will take too long. Let me borrow your car." "Are you kidding me? No way." He didn't know Jim and Cindy as well as Tony did, so he wasn't sure how well-founded her concerns were. He didn't really think Jim would leave her, but he definitely didn't want to be the person who could save their marriage, and didn't. "Okay," he sighed. "Tony will kill me, but sit down." There was only about a foot between his car and the garage door. Adam turned the steering wheel all the way to the right and crept forward until his front bumper touched the door, then turned the steering wheel the other way and rolled back until he felt his rear bumper touch the car behind. He did the same back-and-forth maneuver several times until he was able to drive onto his brother's beautifully manicured front lawn, narrowly missing the car behind him. Cindy was silent the whole time. In fact, she was almost beside herself with everything that was happening. She kept imagining her husband's angry face. She had never seen him so angry before, and she had never seen him hit someone so hard. When she realized that the car was moving forward, her anxiety only increased. She had no idea what she would face when she arrived home. Before she knew it, they were turning into her driveway. Adam stopped the car behind Jim's car. "Do you want me to come in with you?" She thought about it for just a moment. "Thanks, Adam. I appreciate the offer, but I created this mess. Now I have to clean it up." She got out of the car and waved to him to let him know she would be okay. She walked up the steps on her front porch as if her legs weighed 10 pounds each. Once inside, she took a deep breath to gather her strength. He wasn't in the living room. She feared that he was upstairs, packing his things. Just as she started to get up to see if she could talk to him, she heard the noise of a coffee grinder. "Does he make coffee?" she asked herself. Maybe things weren't as bad as she thought. Jim saw her quietly watching him from the kitchen doorway. "Did your lover bring you home?" "If you mean Bob, he's not my lover. And the last time I saw him, he was still lying on the bathroom floor, trying to catch his breath." Jim couldn't help but chuckle at the thought. "Adam brought me home." Jim nodded his head but said nothing more. It was strange. She expected him to at least yell at her, tell her what a fool she was, how ashamed he was. Something. Well, if he's not going to talk, she will. "He caught me off guard, Jim. I didn't kiss him, honestly. He was standing outside the door when I opened it. He pushed me against it and kissed me. I didn't see you push him away. You didn't give me a chance. I was stunned. It took me a second to even realize what was happening, but you hit him before I could push him away." She still wasn't sure if her husband's calm demeanor meant he had truly calmed down, or if it was the calm before the storm. During their conversation, he never stopped doing what he was doing. She almost wanted him to yell at her. His obvious appetite kept her on tenterhooks. "Well, so what?" he asked, pressing the button to start the coffee machine. "Jim, I've never seen you so angry before. I really thought that by the time I got home, you'd be getting ready to leave." "Don't tempt me," he growled. "Yes, you're right. I'm angry," he said, raising his voice. That show you put on was childish and disrespectful. The only reason I'm not more angry is because most of the people at the party knew what you were up to, but you know what makes me even more angry than your stupidity? The fact that you chose to believe one of your stupid friends over me. Have I ever lied to you, huh? The anger he had been holding in began to burst out. Have I ever had reason to be jealous or suspicious? No, never. She'd never heard him call her friends fools before, but she wasn't going to argue with him about it. Honey, I just know how friendly you are all the time. I've seen it with my own eyes. You can meet a complete stranger and make him a friend in 5 minutes, and yes, I've seen you do it with women, too. You may not realize it, but I saw the look in their eyes when you left. I know for a fact that they would drop their panties in a minute. Oh, that's bullshit. You're making me look like Brad Pitt or something. Things were getting worse. She needed to back away before he actually left. Jim, all I'm saying is that you have a great sense of humor and an outgoing personality. People like you. I just want you to realize that some women take this as flirting. They may think you're approachable. It doesn't matter whether you're married or not. She thought she had calmed the situation. So, does this have anything to do with you thinking I go around kissing waitresses and you trust your girlfriend more than your husband? Damn, she thought she could dodge that question. They continued to argue for another 20 minutes, neither of them conceding to the other on the basic issue. Trust. Neither of them spent the night on the couch, in another room, or in another bed. But Cindy knew that sex was definitely not going to happen. He wasn't in the mood for love, and she wasn't about to humiliate herself by trying to change his mind. The following Tuesday, Jim met Tony for drinks after work. Jim was already sitting and had just taken the first sip from the bottle when his friend approached with a big smile. "Hey, Rocky, how's Adrian?" he said, doing his best Stallone impersonation. Jim looked at his friend. "Isn't that what Rocky says?" "Yes, but I can't imitate Burgess Meredith, so make do with what you have," he replied with a laugh. He sat down next to Jim and ordered a beer. "No kidding. How are you and Cindy doing? We barely talk to each other now. I'm still angry and she knows it, so she just tries to avoid me. When are you going to let her go in peace? Many people at the party didn't even notice any problems between you two. Sometime after you left, people started asking where you and Cindy were. What did you tell them? I said something unexpected happened and you had to leave. No one even questioned it. They probably thought you two got horny and went home to make love." Tony chuckled. "Yeah, well, we haven't made love since the party. By the way, what's wrong with Bob? Is he planning revenge?" "I don't think so. Adam came over and told me what happened before he took Cindy home. When I walked into the house, Bob was just getting up. He told me that you meanly hit him." "I did," Jim interjected. "Well, he started talking shit about revenge, but I told him that if I were him, I would stay away from you as much as possible. I told him that you're the toughest guy I've ever, or did, and that I saw you take out guys twice your size. I used my favorite quote from the Bible. Do you have a favorite Bible quote? I didn't know that. Of course, though he walks through the valley of the shadow of death, he fears no evil, for he is the toughest and most vicious bastard in the valley." "It's you." Jim had to laugh. "This is nonsense, and you know it," he said. "Of course I know, and you know, but he doesn't know. I think I scared him enough to make him think twice about coming at you." "Well, I appreciate it, old man." They both smiled as they took a sip. "You know what really pisses me off," Jim asked, "is that she doesn't believe me about kissing the waitress." "Are you sure you didn't kiss her? Maybe a light kiss on the cheek or something?" "No, He stopped talking, and Tony could tell by his face that he remembered something. "Ah, you kissed her, didn't you?" "No, she kissed me," Jim replied. "Damn, I know what it's all about." The next day, Cindy was startled to see Jim entering her office at work. He spoke before she could say anything. "Come on, I'm taking you out to lunch." She thought it was his way of saying he was sorry. "Oh, honey, that's so sweet." She glanced at her watch. "But it's a little early. Can you wait about 20 minutes? "No need. I talked to your boss and told him we had a little family emergency we needed to deal with. I told him you needed a long lunch break and he said no problem." Come on, let's go. Cindy was alarmed. She was not aware of any family emergencies. He held the car door while she got inside. Where are we going? What family emergency? He didn't answer her question, but instead told her to call her friend and find out the name of the restaurant where the kiss allegedly took place. Why? Just please me, okay? I think I get the point. Reluctantly, she called her friend and asked for the name of the restaurant. She said it was DeMar's on Hokeman Street. What a coincidence, he replied with a smile. That's where we're headed. Cindy didn't say anything, but now she was even more worried. She had no idea why he wanted to take her to the scene of the crime, other than to humiliate her. But she knew better. There was no way he would do that. She decided to just sit and wait to see what would happen next. Easier said than done. It took them almost half an hour to get to the restaurant, during which time Cindy imagined hundreds of scenarios in her head. She was almost in tears by the time they pulled into the parking lot. Jim put his hand on her back and guided her inside. She knew she was in trouble as soon as they entered. "Damn!" she whispered under her breath. Jim found a booth and asked Cindy to sit first, then sat next to her. "Well, cousin, I see you brought your better half with you today." Cindy blushed with shame. "Hi, Marilyn," she greeted the waitress. "Hey, Cindy, how did you get my cousin to eat here with his wife? Every time I see him, he's in such a hurry that he can barely finish his food," she said with a laugh. Jim wasn't going to let Cindy go that easily. "Cindy thinks you and I are having a passionate love affair," he said. She waited a few seconds before answering, "What? No, Marilyn, it's not like that," Cindy said to her husband. "Damn it, Jim. Okay, I made a big mistake. I'm sorry." She looked back at Marilyn. "A friend told me he kissed the waitress. I had no idea you worked here." "But we never—" "Last week," Jim chimed in. "You kissed me on the cheek when I walked in." "Oh, Jesus, Cindy, I didn't mean anything by it. He hadn't come by in a while, and it was just an innocent kiss on the cheek." "Marilyn, don't worry about it," Cindy replied. "I understand it now. My so-called girlfriend made it sound like Jim had a girlfriend working here. I'll call her later and tell her what I think." "That's what I'd like to hear," Jim challenged. Cindy looked at him and accepted the challenge. "Okay," she said, taking her phone out of her purse. Both Jim and Marilyn witnessed Cindy's conversation with her friend. "Hey, Linda." "Not very good. You know that waitress you said kissed Jim? You know who it was. Jim's cousin." "Yes, his cousin." "No, I didn't like that you told me. You made it sound like he was having an affair or something. I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think you see him having sex in the middle of the dance floor from here on out. Moment. Keep your gossip to yourself. Yes, you too." She almost hurt her finger while passing out. Jim guessed that it must be Linda who created all these problems. She constantly made derogatory remarks about her own husband. Cindy was excited after the call. "I'm really sorry to both of you. Jim was right. I should have known better." "You have a few more apologies to bring home tonight," Jim told her. "You owe Tony, Barbara, and even Jenny an apology." "What about Bob?" "You can tell Bob to go to hell. You can't pursue a married woman, no matter how much she flirts." Marilyn was still standing next to their table. "Who is Bob?" she asked. "Her boyfriend," Jim freely interpreted. "Boy." She was surprised. "Don't listen to him, Marilyn. I made a mistake, and he's not done teasing me about it yet." "It looks like you had a cool weekend," Marilyn said. "Let's just say I'm pretty sure Cindy learned something about trust," Jim replied. Cindy was more than a little embarrassed. She blushed as she opened the menu. "So, Marilyn, what do you recommend?" Later, after dinner, Cindy spent nearly an hour on the phone apologizing to her friends, including Jenny. That night, they both lay naked in bed. "Are you still angry?" "It depends." "From what?" "On whether you still think I would cheat on you." "I never really thought you were cheating on me." I was worried that you might give some woman a reason to think you would. I just didn't want you to encourage her. He thought about it and remembered how angry he had been watching her flirt with Bob. He would never admit it, but he really felt what it was like to be in her shoes, even though she went too far. Just as he was about to tell her that all was forgiven, he felt her hand slide down his body. "Come on, honey, you can't stay mad at me," she said sweetly. A month later, Cindy and Barbara were having lunch together. "You and Jim seem to be getting along. Is he still flirting with the waitresses?" "Not much," Cindy replied. "He's still as friendly as ever, and I wouldn't want that to change. I love that about him, but he seems to hold back sometimes now." "This is all you ever wanted, isn't it?" "Exactly." Barbara guessed the answer to her next question, but asked anyway, "Have you heard anything from Bob?" "No, and to be honest, I'm a little offended. One hit, and he just disappeared, coward." They both had a good laugh about it. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.